Hey guys, thank you for watching. This is Zach. I'm going to be replacing my lower and bottom ball joints on my 2008 Ford 250. We have a lot of chatter and a lot of noise. Definitely unsafe to use my truck. If you like my video, please subscribe and like. We'll go ahead and get into it. Thank you. This is a 2008 Ford F-250 front wheel drive. First job with removing the top and bottom joint is to obviously remove the tire. And I have the truck jacked up with a stand as well. And I just have the jack on there just as safety. I'll go ahead and remove the tire. Your hubcap should come off really easy with a screwdriver and these little notches. And then I have a snap-on air wrench with a 13th, 16th deep socket to help take off these nuts. The next thing you need to do is take off these calipers. There's two bolts in the back, one on top, one on the bottom. I believe they are also a 13th, 16th. When you take off your calipers, make sure to tie them up somewhere. I tie them up here on the spring. Next job is to remove this cap. You kind of have to be super careful and stick a little screwdriver in the crevice right here, and then you should be able to pull it right back without denting it, and then you can reuse it. I got the cap off. There's a little bit of a dent there. I'll be able to fix that. Next, to take off your rotor, you gotta remove this cotter pin, and then remove this crown, this castle, and then there's a small thin nut and washer behind that. Once the cotter pin and the castle are gone, it just takes a little bit of a torque to take off this thin nut. Don't be afraid or scared that it's loose. It's designed that way so it doesn't keep pressure on the bearings on the inside of the rotor. After the hardware is off of the rotors, it slides right off. Be careful not to have the inner and outer tapered bearings fall off. We're going to remove this heat shield. That's a 5/16, I believe, and this is your ABS. We're going to nicely try to remove that and not break it and set it off to the side. To remove your ABS brake sensor, there's a bracket back here that you're going to have to remove, and there's also a bolt right here, and your ABS sensor should slip out real nicely. After your ABS brake sensor is out, there's three things that we're going to need to do. One, I want to remove the steering tie rod. So we're going to take this cotter out, this castle, and remove that nut, and this should just knock straight down. We're going to remove this cross bolt that pinches down on your top joint, and we're also going to remove the castle nut and cotter pin from the lower bolt joint, and hopefully it just falls right out. Your steering tie rod happens to be a 13/16 as well. Once it's removed, it might take the steering being moved back and forth for it to easily be dropped out. You can also whack it with a mallet, but just be careful on the joint that you don't hurt it, because we're not fixing that. Once all your hardware is off, you can go ahead and take a crowbar or a big screwdriver and pop this canter bushing in. This is important, and it should be a replaceable part. I had to special order mine online to get it. Mine just happens to be a 1 degree. Once your bushing is removed, this is the one that I used. I got a replacement Moog part. It's going to take a little bit of convincing to remove this bottom bowl joint. It's stuck on there pretty good. This one's loose. I'm just going to whack that a couple times. I don't have to worry about marring it up because I'm going to replace it. and after that this whole bracket should fall off. It took a lot more convincing than I would want, but after using some of this PV blaster and letting it soak for 10-15 minutes and then whacking it with this 4-pound hammer and a piece of iron, we were able to knock it out. Now just be careful when the bottom ball joint falls out that the whole bracket doesn't fall and somehow crack or do something stupid. So it's nice having a helper make sure that it doesn't happen. Bought this upper and lower ball joint press kit that helps out pressing pressing the joints out of this bracket. It does pretty well, but if it's been sitting there for a long time, it will not fall out. You can crank it and crank it, crank it. If you're lucky, it might pop out, but if not, you're gonna have to take it to somebody. We're pretty lucky that we have a 20-ton press, and this guy's looking over it. Before you remove the bottom ball joint, be sure to remove the snap ring. Using some of the cups in the kit, we brought it up a little bit, and then we're gonna press this bottom one out first. I got the bottom out, pressing out the top now. We have this 10-inch piece of solid that we're using to press down the middle, so we have a straightaway to the top ball joint, and here we go. Both of these are really worn and they just move easily with your hand, so I'm happy we're replacing them. Installing the lower ball joint, we have a cup on the top, on the shoulder, and then a cup on the bottom, because the bottom one protrudes outside the frame, and we're going to go ahead and press it down until it stops. Just moving it down to the shoulder, and then it's going to just stop. And it's pressed all the way in. We've got the lower one on. Now we're going to install the top one. It's always good to use a safety shoulder. So the lower kit comes with a new cotter pin, castle nut, snap ring, and a Zerk grease fitting. The top one comes with a new bolt and nut for the cross member, and also a Zerk. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the grease fittings on the bottom of each joint. The top Zerk is a 3/8. Bottom is a 5/16. I got the new snap ring on there. Don't over tighten your Zerks. Probably go ahead and grease right now so you don't have to worry about it later. And I installed this one facing the steering rod, so that's easy to grease at a later date. I've installed the lower crowned nut and put the cotter pin through for safety. I got it torqued down to about 70 pounds. I'm going to install the upper bushing, canter bushing. I have the slot lined up with this slot, and that happens to line up perfectly to the old one. I'm just going to tap this in. Got my cross member bolt here that pinches down on the whole bushing and ball joint, and I brought it to 90 pounds. Just wrapping this up. Got the ABS sensor back on, got the back bracket back on, lower ball joint nut, crown nut is all good to go. Got my steering rod back on with the crown and cotter, and I cranked it down to 80 pounds. Gave it an extra snug. Now I'm going to install the heat shield back on. Now we're reusing the inner and outer bearing. If we were replacing the rotor, go ahead and replace the bearings. Don't try to save money. I cleaned out all the old grease and I repacked it. Don't get too crazy with the grease. It's really bad if you overdo it. I also cleaned off the shaft here and gave it a little bit of grease on there. Running the lathe right now over there, so it's a little noisy, sorry. So what I like to do is go ahead and put the rotor back on, push it on, put the big washer on, and then crank down your nut and then loosen it, and then basically go hand tight, just but with a little bit of extra nudge. You're not supposed to make this tight. If you do, it puts too much pressure on your bearings and you're gonna wear them out. Believe it or not, that's what you're supposed to do. We'll make another video later on replacing rotors and we'll go more in depth. But I have my crown back on and my cotter pin. Now we're going to install that hubcap. Cap just goes back on. I just popped it back on. This one's fine for now, but I'm going to want to replace it next time I do my rotors. Alright, I got the calipers back on and the two 13/16 bolts. I did a safety check on everything, make sure I didn't forget anything. I'm going to install the tire and then torque the tire nuts on at 120 pounds per spec. Alright, I got the job all wrapped up here. Please keep all safety stuff in mind. Follow directions. I'm obviously not 100% an expert. Seek some advice from other people. Double check all your work, and if it's questionable, replace it. Alright, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. This is Zeb Zach, and I will see you soon.